Undercover black CEO finds his janitor crying. What he discovers breaks him first. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. I said stop crying and clean it up or you're gone. The words cracked through Grayson's market like a slammed door. Customers turned. A mop bucket rattled against tile. And the young janitor, eyes red, glove still pressed to her cheek, froze as if the shout had pinned her to the floor. At the entrance, the sliding doors parted with a soft hiss, letting in a slice of sunlight and a man in a gray t-shirt and dark cap. He stepped inside just in time to witness the scene. Marcus Reed didn't move at first. He just stood there, framed by the open doorway like a question the room wasn't ready to answer. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. He took one quiet step forward. The janitor, maybe 22, maybe younger, blinked through tears, trying to apologize for something that wasn't her fault. A puddle of spilled juice spread across the floor beside her. Her supervisor stood over her, jaw tight, voice sharp enough to cut skin. "Useless," he hissed. "Every day with you. Every damn day." A few shoppers pretended not to hear. One mother pulled her child closer. A stock boy paused behind a stack of cereal boxes, eyes wide but silent. Marcus watched all of it. He wore no suit, no badge, no hint of power, just jeans, old sneakers, and the kind of calm that made people underestimate him every time. He had built entire districts of this company from the ground up, and yet in moments like these, moments when cruelty wasn't subtle but bold, he felt like the kid he once was, standing in a hardware store at 15, while a clerk accused him of stealing because boys like you don't shop here. He remembered that tone. He remembered that certainty. And he remembered the humiliation that stayed with him long after the clerk forgot his face. The supervisor kicked the mop handle toward the janitor. "Pick it up, now." Marcus stepped fully into the aisle. The stock boy looked up at him, uncertain but hopeful, as if recognizing something in the way Marcus carried himself, not loud, not heated, but anchored. "Sir," Marcus called out, his voice steady, carrying across the store without rising. "That's enough. Well a bit." The supervisor turned, scoffing. "Mind your business. She works for me." Marcus didn't blink. "Does she?" For the first time, the supervisor hesitated. The janitor wiped her face with the back of her sleeve, eyes flicking between the two men, fear in one direction, a strange and cautious relief in the other. A cashier near the register leaned forward slightly, whispering, "She didn't do anything. He's been after her all week." Marcus heard it, filed it away. But he kept his gaze locked on the supervisor. "Apologize to her," Marcus said quietly. The man laughed too loud, too forced. "What? Who do you think you are?" Marcus didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, he took one more step, close enough that the air shifted, close enough that the supervisor finally felt the weight behind the silence. "You're in my store," Marcus said, voice low, controlled. "And you just crossed a line." The janitor's breath hitched. The stock boy straightened. Even the customers held still. They didn't know who he was. Not yet. But they could feel something changing. Like the moment before a storm, hits quiet, charged, inevitable. Marcus looked at the trembling young woman and spoke gently. "No one talks to you like that. Not here." The supervisor opened his mouth to argue again, but the sentence never came. Because Marcus reached into his pocket, tapped his phone once, and the screen lit up with a name no one else could see. And in that instant, the story began to turn, held its air, held its noise, held its judgment hanging in the fluorescent light. Marcus stepped closer to the janitor, not touching her, just placing himself between her and the rage dripping off her supervisor. The man scoffed, like Marcus's presence was an inconvenience, not a boundary. "Sir, I told you," he said, voice cracking with authority he didn't truly have. This isn't your business. But Marcus didn't step back. He studied the floor, the spilled juice, the trembling mop, the way her gloved hands closed into tiny fists to stop themselves from shaking. He looked up. "You don't speak to people like that," Marcus said quietly. The supervisor let out a dry laugh. "I'll talk, however, I damn well." "No," a softer voice cut in from the left. The stock boy. He had inched closer, cereal box still tucked under one arm, throat tight with something like fear. "She didn't spill it," he whispered. A customer bumped the shelf. "I saw it." The supervisor's eyes narrowed. "Stay out of this, kid." The boy shrank, but Marcus didn't let the moment die. "What's your name?" Marcus asked him. "Eli," the boy murmured. "You told the truth, Eli." Marcus nodded once, like it mattered, like it meant something, because to him it did. But the supervisor waved a dismissive hand. "Sir, either shop or move along. I don't need you teaching my staff anything." "Your staff." Marcus almost smiled at that. A few customers paused their carts nearby, watching, waiting. It was starting that slow, uneasy shift in the room when people sense something wrong but don't know whose side to stand on yet. The janitor wiped her cheek again, avoiding everyone's eyes. "I'm fine," she whispered. But her voice shook the way a person shakes when they've learned to apologize for surviving. Marcus turned to her. "You don't have to be." Two of two islands. The supervisor stepped forward, chest puffed, trying to loom. "Look, man, I don't know who you think you are." Then he made the mistake. He jabbed a finger toward Marcus's shoulder. He didn't touch him. Not quite. But he hovered there close enough that the intent was contact, intimidation, dominance. And that was enough. A single memory, sharp as broken glass, flashed behind Marcus's eyes. 23 years old, standing in a retail store in Milwaukee. A manager towered over him, hand on his shoulder, pushing him aside, telling him, "Don't wander near the displays. We've had issues with people like you." He remembered turning away so they wouldn't see the heat in his face. People like you. The phrase had traveled with him for decades. Back to now. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in the air did. "You're about to cross a line you can't uncross," he said softly. The supervisor scoffed. "Is that a threat?" "No, Doe." Marcus's voice stayed level. "It's a warning." A cashier, the same young woman who whispered earlier, looked up from her register. She swallowed hard, then called out, "His name's in the system, I saw it. Her manager snapped, "Rebecca, stay in your lane." She flinched, but didn't sit down completely. For the first time, she wasn't folding, she was watching, and other eyes joined hers. People in checkout lines. A mother rocking a baby on her hip. Two teenagers, with earbuds dangling. Even the elderly man in aisle 4 with a cane paused mid-step. It wasn't open support yet, but it was awareness. A room turning. The supervisor's voice rose again, brittle with ego. "I said move along, man." Marcus finally lifted his chin, eyes calm, steady, unshakable. "I'm not going anywhere." He pulled his phone from his pocket, not quickly, not dramatically, just with the assuredness of someone who knows exactly what happens next. On the screen, one contact glowed. He tapped it once. A soft tone. A connection. "Rachel," Marcus said, still watching the supervisor. "Start recording. We may need this for an internal audit." The room blinked. Internal audit? Rebecca froze. The stock boy's eyes widened. Even the janitor looked up. The supervisor sputtered, "Internal, what are you?" But then Marcus said the words that tightened every muscle in the man's jaw. "Store 47. Activation code pending. Coming hour." Not loud, not theatrical, but enough to make something invisible and powerful hum under the surface. Because whatever this was, whatever he was, it wasn't normal. The supervisor stepped back, suddenly unsure. What did you just say?" he stammered. Marcus didn't answer him. Not yet. Because the reveal wasn't for part 2. This was still the ascent. The pressure. The moment before a storm breaks open. He simply slipped his phone back into his pocket and said, "You should really rethink the way you treat people." And for the first time since the shouting began, the supervisor didn't have a comeback, just silence. And the first bloom of fear, because he could feel it, the ground shifting under his feet. The longer Elijah stood there, the heavier the grocery store felt. A place built for noise, scanning beeps, rustling bags, casual chatter now held the kind of silence you only hear right before lightning hits the ground. Across from him, Troy, the shift manager, folded his arms tighter across his chest. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, humming like a warning. He wasn't backing off. If anything, he was leaning in. "So, let me get this straight," Troy said, each word wrapped in accusation. "You just walked back here, into staff-only storage, and this man," he jutted his chin toward Marcus, "just happens to be crying in the dark? Convenient." Elijah didn't raise his voice. "Not a decibel. I heard him, that's all." But the calm only made Troy angrier. "You heard him," Troy repeated, smirking. "You expect me to believe that? You're not even supposed to be in this section. Customers don't go back there." That. Behind Troy, two cashiers had stopped bagging completely. One whispered, "He's the same guy from this morning." The other replied, "The one they followed around aisle 5. Their voices weren't soft. They didn't intend them to be. Marcus had stepped out of the storage room now, wiping his face with a trembling hand. He tried to speak, but nothing stable came out, just a cracked breath, the kind you let slip when someone shoves you past your limit. Troy turned to him sharply. "And you," he barked, "why are you crying at work? Got something to hide? Did he," he pointed at Elijah, "pressure you into saying something?" Marcus was shaking his head fast. "No, he didn't." "Enough!" Troy cut him off so loudly a toddler in aisle 3 started wailing. "You're both coming with me. Right now." Elijah didn't move, and that his stillness ignited the room. Troy stepped forward, chest puffed, trying to tower over Elijah. But Elijah wasn't retreating, not an inch. His posture stayed straight, steady, unmoved, like the floor itself rose up behind him. "You deaf?" Troy snapped. "I said move." Elijah's voice was a low blade. "Don't talk to him like that." Shoppers turned. One woman near the self-checkout froze mid-scan, barcode still pressed to her cereal box. Phones started to lift subtle at first, then bolder. A teenager whispered, "Record this. Something's about to go down." Marcus's breathing shuddered. "Please, don't fight because of me." Too, that one of port. But the fight was already in the air, invisible, dense, almost visible between the three men like heat waves on asphalt. Troy jabbed a finger toward Elijah. "I don't know who you think you are, but you're not about to start trouble in my store." The word "my" snapped something in Elijah's expression, not rage, but realization. Not yet. Not here. But soon. He inhaled once, slow. "Your store?" he repeated, voice calm enough to shake the room. "Is that what you think this is?" Troy scoffed. "Manager on duty means I run this place, and you're about 2 seconds from being banned permanently." Behind Troy, a younger employee, Kayla, the trainee from Part 2, took a cautious step forward. Her voice was soft, but it reached the space between them. "Sir, I think Marcus really was crying," she said. "He's been asking for help all week. Troy snapped toward her. "Kayla, go clock out if you can't stay in your lane." She didn't move. Not this time. "But he's hurt. And you keep clock out." The cruelty in his tone sliced through the store. Marcus folded into himself, hands shaking again. Elijah placed a steady palm on the man's back, not pushing or guiding, just anchoring him. Then, with a voice soft enough to still the aisle, Elijah said, "He's not crying because of me. He's crying because of you." The words hit the room like an invisible shockwave. A woman near the produce section whispered, "Oh my God." Another pulled out her phone fully and said, "I knew it. I knew something was off with that manager." Troy's jaw tightened. Over his shoulder, another employee shifted as if reconsidering everything. Even the beeping scanners slowed humans holding their breath through machines. "You're making a scene," Troy hissed. "No," Elijah replied. "You made it the moment you treated him like he didn't matter." Number X. For a full 3 seconds, no one moved. Not Troy, not Marcus, not the customers watching with wide, startled eyes. Then Marcus whispered, voice cracking, "Elijah, please don't get involved because of me." Elijah leaned closer, his voice barely above a breath, but sharp as truth. "I'm involved because someone should have been. Long before today." The room wasn't just tense now. It was turning. And Troy felt it. His eyes darted around the phones, the witnesses, the shift in the air he no longer controlled. "You know what?" he snapped abruptly. "I'm calling corporate. Both of you are staying right here until they arrive." He stepped back toward the service desk, grabbing the phone with a trembling hand and punching digits like he was trying to crush the keypad. And Elijah. Elijah just watched him, unmoving, unbothered, unshaken, like a man who already knew something no one else did, a truth waiting to surface. A truth this store wasn't ready for. The rising tension wasn't just tension anymore. It was the beginning of the storm. The phone at the service desk rang only once before someone on the other end picked up. But Troy didn't speak like a man seeking help. He spoke like a man grasping for control that had already slipped through his fingers. "Yes, this is Manager Troy at Store 47, he said, loudly enough for half the front end to hear. "We've got a situation. Possible theft, possible harassment, 2 individuals refusing to comply." Every word was deliberate. Every accusation was constructed. Every syllable aimed squarely at Elijah. Marcus flinched. "He's lying," he whispered. People around them whispered too. "He's flipping it on them. That's not what happened." "Is he serious right now?" Troy kept going, glaring at Elijah while speaking into the phone. "Yes, 1 male customer and 1 employee. No, they're not cooperating. Yes, I feel threatened." That last sentence, "I feel threatened," hung in the air like smoke from a match. Marcus took a step back, hand covering his mouth. "Elijah, please, don't let him pin this on you." But Elijah didn't react outwardly. His stillness was its own force. "Troy," he said quietly, "hang up the phone." Troy turned his back like he hadn't heard a word. That's when Kayla, the trainee, moved. She wasn't bold. She wasn't loud. She wasn't confrontational. But she stepped closer with a small, shaking voice. "Sir, you can't report it like that. That's not what happened." Troy spun around so fast she flinched. "Kayla, you're done. Clock out. Right now." "But now." Her eyes watered. But she didn't move. Not this time. "He didn't do anything," she said, voice cracking. "Marcus did nothing. I heard him crying too. You just didn't want to listen." A quiet gasp ran through the checkout lanes. Phones fully lifted now. Cameras pointed. Reality being recorded from 5 different angles. Troy's face reddened. "All of you put your damn phones down!" No one did. Elijah finally stepped forward. Not aggressive, not fast. Just enough that his presence met Troy's collapsing authority squarely. But before he could speak, the world tilted. Literally. As a flash of memory sliced through him. Flashback, 17 years ago. A hallway. Locker doors slamming. The smell of old paint and summer sweat. A younger Elijah, maybe 16, cornered outside a classroom he wasn't even late to. A security guard grabbing his backpack, yanking it so hard the strap snapped. "Where'd you steal this from?" the guard barked. Kids watching, some laughing, some pretending not to. Young Elijah stuttering, I didn't. It's mine." The guard opening the bag, seeing textbooks, a lunchbox, and still not believing his innocence. "You kids always got an excuse," the guard muttered, shoving the bag back at him. The shame burned hotter than the bruise on his shoulder. "People like you." The same tone, the same assumption, the same pattern. Back to present. A cereal box slipped from a woman's hands and hit the floor, loud enough to snap Elijah back to the grocery aisle. Troy was still on the phone, still performing his version of the truth. Yes, send someone urgently," Troy insisted. "This man is becoming hostile." Elijah blinked once, slow. He wasn't 16 anymore. He wasn't cornered. And he wasn't powerless. He stepped closer, only a foot, but enough that the room shifted around him. "Put the phone down," Elijah repeated, voice steady as steel. Troy ignored him and raised his volume. "Yes, I'm asking for an immediate response. I don't feel safe." Elijah reached out and pressed the receiver's button with one calm finger. Click. The call ended. The entire store froze. Troy stared at the silent receiver in disbelief, then looked up at Elijah with a rage that faltered into something else, fear. "You just made the biggest mistake of your—" "No," Elijah cut in. "I stopped you from making yours. Phones. recorded every frame, every second, every breath. "You're framing an employee who asked for help," Elijah said, "and you're trying to twist a man's pain into your justification." Troy sputtered. You can't speak to me like that. I'm your manager when you're under this roof." Elijah's head tilted slightly. Under this roof. A quiet breath escaped him, almost a laugh, though humor wasn't in the air. He looked around the store, at the aisles, at the employees watching, at the overhead signs he knew better than anyone else in the building. Under this roof. He finally looked back at Troy. "That's the thing," Elijah said softly. "You don't know whose roof this really is." A ripple spread across the room. The first hint. Not a reveal. Just a crack in the door. Kayla covered her mouth. Marcus blinked in confusion. Customers leaned in. Troy swallowed, stepping back despite himself. "What are you talking about?" Elijah didn't answer. Not yet. Because part 4 wasn't for the reveal. It was for the breaking point. He placed a steady hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You're not alone anymore," he said quietly. "And this ends today." The room didn't just tense. It shifted. Gravity changing. Power realigning. The storm, preparing its center. And Troy, standing in the middle of it, finally sensed he wasn't the biggest force in the room anymore. Not even close. For a second, no one breathed. It wasn't just silence anymore. It was the kind of stillness that happens right before a tree falls, before a verdict is spoken, before power finally shifts. Troy's voice trembled first. "What do you mean? This roof?" he asked, words tripping over themselves. But Elijah didn't answer. Not to him. Not yet. Instead, he turned to Marcus. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Marcus nodded, but only halfway. The kind of nod that means "I want to be okay," not "I am." Behind them, a customer whispered, "He's protecting him." Another replied, "No, he's doing more than that." Phones continued recording. Staff continued watching. And Troy, desperate to reclaim control, jabbed a finger toward the two men. "You two aren't going anywhere," he snapped. "Not until corporate gets here. Haven't wearing that might cause some wonders." Elijah's eyes lowered, calm, steady, unshaken. "I already told you," he said. "You should rethink the way you treat people. Don't lecture me." Troy's voice cracked like he wasn't used to being challenged. "I'm the one with authority here." That was when Elijah slowly reached into his pocket. Not abruptly. Not theatrically. Just enough that the room held its breath. He pulled out his phone. The same phone he used in part 2 to call Rachel. The one no customer or employee should have had access to. He unlocked it with a quiet chime, then tapped a single icon. A symbol no one recognized, but one he knew intimately. A secure line. A direct line. He raised it to his ear. "Rachel," he said, steady as a heartbeat. "We're moving forward." Marcus froze. Kayla's jaw dropped. Troy blinked in confusion. "Proceed to protocol," Rachel asked on the other end. Elijah's eyes locked on Troy's. "Yes, activate store. 47 internal review. Is exit." A hush swept across the grocery store. Internal review? Employees exchanged looks. Customers lowered their phones, then raised them again. Something big was happening. Even Marcus stepped back, whispering, "Elijah, what is that?" Troy tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "What internal review? What are you, some wannabe lawyer? Calling a hotline won't save you." Elijah didn't break eye contact. "It's not a hotline. Ass." Rachel's voice echoed clearly through the speaker. "Review protocol initiated. Logging audio. Prep HR line. Notifying district oversight." Every word landed like a brick. Kayla whispered, "Wait, that's real? That's above store level." Troy's face drained of color. "Who the hell did you call?" he demanded. Elijah ignored him. He turned slightly, lowering his voice not to hide, but to control the moment. "Rachel, confirm audit timestamp. Timestamp locked. All recordings synced. Proceed when ready." Elijah nodded once, a subtle command. Then he finally looked back at Troy. "You're framing your own employees. You're weaponizing fear, and you're lying to your chain of command." I didn't lie," Troy stuttered. "I'm reporting a threat. That's my job." "No," Elijah said, all quiet thunder. Your job is to protect the people who rely on you, not destroy them. Even the store's hum seemed to stop. Marcus whispered, He never protected any of us. And Kayla Braver now added, he ignores complaints. He yells at us off camera. Last week he threw a binder at Reggie for asking for his schedule. 2 customers gasped. Another whispered, I knew it. I knew something was wrong with that guy. Troy whipped toward the employees. You all want to keep your jobs, right? Then shut your mouths and get... Elijah spoke over him. Not loudly, but with enough weight to tilt the room. Rachel, connect the district manager. Troy snapped. Don't you dare! But the call clicked anyway. A new voice entered the line. Calm. Authoritative. Decisive. Elijah, I'm here. Troy froze. That voice. That tone. That familiarity. His throat closed. Elijah? He muttered. Kayla whispered. Why does the district manager know his name? All eyes locked on Elijah now. The calmest person in the room. The one who never raised his voice. The one who moved like he had nothing to prove. Because he didn't. Troy, Elijah said, this is your last moment to tell the truth. Troy swallowed. What truth? You know which one. If. Troy looked around the room. The cameras, the witnesses, the phone glowing like a verdict in Elijah's hand. Then he cracked. Okay. I might have exaggerated the call, he blurted. But I didn't lie. I just... You framed an employee in distress, Elijah said, voice sharpening. And you tried to intimidate a customer into silence. Troy's face crumpled. I didn't know who you were. Elijah's eyes narrowed, quiet and unwavering. That's the problem. The room pulsed. Not with noise. With realization. Because this wasn't a customer. This wasn't a bystander. This wasn't someone wandering the aisles. This was someone with reach. With authority. With access to people Troy didn't even have email permissions for. Someone Troy should never have underestimated. Elijah, the district manager said through the phone, you have the green light. Proceed. A collective inhale swept the room. Proceed with what? Troy staggered back a step, panic finally blooming. Elijah, who are you? Elijah lowered the phone slowly, meeting Troy's eyes with an expression that said everything and nothing at once. I'm the wrong person, he said softly. To underestimate. Not the reveal. Not yet. But the moment right before the wall breaks. The turn had begun, and the collapse was coming. People always talk about the moment before a storm hits. But they never talk about the other moment. The one where everyone in the room realizes. The storm isn't coming from outside. It's been standing quietly among them the whole time. That was the moment Store 47 was living in. Troy stepped back so hard his heel hit a pallet of bottled water. The plastic crinkled under the pressure. His voice cracked. Elijah, what does that mean? What does any of this mean? Elijah didn't answer him. His calm was too precise for panic, too deliberate for uncertainty. He lifted the phone again. Rachel, he said, patch in oversight. A click. A tone. Then a new voice, lower, firmer, unmistakably higher in rank. Elijah, this is Director Shaw. We received your protocol flag. Standing by. Troy's lips parted, barely forming sound. Director Shaw. Kayla's hands flew to her mouth. Wait, he has direct access to oversight? A customer whispered, That's not normal. And another responded, no regular shopper calls oversight. Not even managers. The truth was beginning its slow, inevitable rise. Marcus, still trembling but standing straighter, now looked at Elijah with a kind of disbelief that carried hope inside it. Elijah, what's happening? But Elijah wasn't ready to answer him yet. Not while Troy was still hiding behind lies. Director Shaw, Elijah said calmly, I need you to log Manager Troy Hawthorne for misconduct multiple counts. Attempted falsification of incident reports. Retaliation against employees. Intimidation of witnesses. Shaw responded instantly. Logged. Continue. Each word from oversight landed like a gavel. The customers murmured. The staff tensed. The store itself seemed to listen. Troy's eyes darted like a trapped animal. You can't just do that. You can't go around logging me like some criminal. I didn't know who you were. Elijah looked at him then. Truly looked, not with anger, not with pity, with a kind of steady disappointment that was heavier than either. That's the point, Elijah said softly. You didn't need to know who I was. To treat Marcus with dignity. Phones recorded, cameras zoomed, customers whispered. Someone murmured, he's not just anybody. He can't be. 8. Troy tried to grab onto something, anything left of his authority. I didn't do anything wrong. I've been running this store for years. I know how things work. I've seen troublemakers before. I can spot them a mile away. Elijah stepped closer. Just one step, but it was enough to silence the room. Troublemakers. He repeated the word like it was an artifact from another era. It's interesting how people like you always use that word when someone's hurting, or crying, or asking for help. Troy swallowed hard. Kayla said quietly, You never helped any of us. Another employee behind her whispered, Yeah, he only shows up to yell. Elijah's jaw tightened just slightly. Director Shaw, he said, pull the past month's employee complaints from store 47. Already retrieving, Shaw replied. Stand by. Troy's face paled. No, hold on. We don't need to do that. Those were just misunderstandings. Elijah didn't even blink. Were they? Shaw's voice returned. Record shows 12 complaints. 7 marked ignored, 3 marked closed without follow-up, 2 marked employee error, but no evidence supporting any of the classifications. The store erupted in murmurs. 7 ignored? 12 complaints? He never followed up on anything? Troy's voice went high, defensive. That doesn't mean anything. We're understaffed. We're busy. I can't babysit every employee who gets emotional. Calaman station. The sentence stopped the air from moving. Kayla recoiled like she'd been slapped. Marcus looked down, shame flooding his face even though none of the shame belonged to him. Elijah's voice lowered. You think asking for basic respect is being emotional? Troy's hands shook. I didn't mean, look, I'm just trying to run this place. No, Elijah cut in, voice steady as a closing door. You're trying to run people over. The room went silent again. Director Shaw spoke. Elijah, recommendation? Elijah's eyes stayed on Troy. Temporarily suspend his access, he said, pending full investigation. Troy stepped back as if physically struck. You can't suspend me. Who the hell are you two? Beep. His badge vibrated. A sharp, undeniable red light buzz. Access revoked. A gasp rolled through the store from aisle 1 to the bakery. Kayla whispered, Oh my God. Marcus clutched his chest. And Troy, the man who barked orders, who used fear as policy, who turned a crying employee into a weapon, looked at his badge like it had betrayed him. This has to be a mistake. Elijah finally stepped forward, closing the last inch between them. This isn't a mistake, he said gently. It's accountability. The room shook with silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of truth coming into focus. And the reveal was no longer a shadow on the horizon. It was here. In the room, in Elijah's voice. In the authority wrapped in every word he spoke. Troy backed away, breath hitching. Elijah, who are you? Elijah didn't answer. Not yet. Because part 6 was the fall. Part 7 would be the impact. Troy stood there shaking, badge still glowing red in his hand like it was bleeding authority onto the floor. He kept staring at it as if staring hard enough would make it turn green again. It didn't. Elijah, Troy whispered, voice thin as thread. You can't do this. You don't have the authority. The customers watching shifted, leaning in like an audience, sensing the exact second a curtain will drop. Kayla swallowed. Marcus blinked rapidly. Even the self-checkout machines seemed to pause between beeps, like they understood the gravity, but Elijah didn't answer yet. Instead, he breathed in slowly, grounding himself, as if pulling the last piece of patience from his chest before letting the truth finally arrive. Then he turned, not to Troy, but to Marcus. Marcus, he said gently, do you remember the form you filed 3 weeks ago? Marcus froze. I do. The harassment complaint. Marcus nodded again, more slowly this time, like remembering it hurt. You submitted it twice, Elijah continued. And what happened? Marcus's voice cracked. It was closed, no follow-up, no call, nothing. A ripple of disgust moved through the staff. 2 cashiers covered their mouths. A customer muttered, "Figures." Elijah turned back to Troy. "That was you, wasn't it?" Troy swallowed hard. It wasn't worth escalating. He was having a rough day. I didn't want to stir things up. The room bristled. Phones tilted forward. Elijah didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You didn't escalate it because you didn't care." Troy opened his mouth, but Elijah kept going, voice calm and cutting. "You didn't de-escalate. You didn't document. You didn't support him. You broke protocol. You broke trust. You broke people." The words struck harder than shouting ever could. The crowd murmured quietly but intensely. "He's done. That manager is finished." Finally, Troy's breathing turned shallow. "Look, I didn't realize who you were. If I had known..." Elijah's eyes narrowed. "And if I wasn't who I am right now, you'd still be trying to have Marcus fired." Silence swallowed the room whole. Then, finally, Elijah let the truth surface. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a single black card. Not a credit card, but an access ID with the kind of metallic embossing no regular employee ever sees. The kind reserved for 3 people in the entire company. 3. He held it between 2 fingers, letting the overhead lights catch the engraved seal. A corporate emblem, a division crest, and a title. Director. Troy's mouth fell open. No, that's not you, can't." Elijah turned the card outward, letting the nearest customers and employees see it clearly. Kayla gasped. "Oh my God, he's corporate." Marcus stared as if seeing light for the first time. He's corporate leadership." One customer whispered, That's the top. And Elijah spoke the words that detonated the room. "I'm Elijah Grant," he said quietly, "Senior Operations Director for the entire Grayson Market chain." Actions, phones shot up higher. Someone whispered, "Holy, oh, this just got real." Another clapped a hand over their mouth. "That means he outranks everyone here." Troy's knees almost buckled. Director Grant? That can't..." "It can," Elijah said. "And it is." Troy's voice shrank to a rasp. If I had known, you would have treated me differently," Elijah finished for him. "But that's exactly the problem. Respect shouldn't depend on knowing someone's title. Is it, Menery?" The entire store felt the sentence land. A cashier whispered, "That's the coldest line I've ever heard." Another said, "Play that back. Someone play that back." Troy stumbled backward, palms sweating. I didn't mean..." Elijah stepped closer, close enough that Troy's panic showed in his breath. "You meant every word you said to Marcus, and every word you tried to use against me. One zay." Marcus swallowed hard, overwhelmed, eyes brimming. Not from sadness this time, but from the shock of finally being seen. Then Elijah turned to him fully. "I read your complaint the moment it was filed," he said. "I remember your name." The trembling in Marcus's hands stopped. Completely. Kayla wiped a tear she didn't expect to shed. And Elijah faced the room, employees, customers, cameras, all of them, and delivered the line that locked this moment into something unforgettable. "When you mistreat the people under your roof, you answer to the person who built it." The store absorbed the sentence like gospel. Phones captured it. Hearts felt it. And Troy? Troy finally realized the truth. This wasn't a customer he could threaten. This wasn't an employee he could silence. This wasn't a situation he controlled. This was judgment. Calm, measured, inevitable. And Elijah Grant was the one carrying it. The grocery store didn't erupt immediately. There was no cheer, no chaos, no applause. Just a stunned electric silence. The kind that comes when everyone in the room realizes they've just witnessed a man reach the edge of his own downfall. Troy's lips trembled, soundless. He looked from Elijah's ID to Elijah's face, to the dozens of phones, pointing at him like witnesses in a courtroom. "Director Grant," he whispered, voice cracking under the weight of a name he had no right to say. I didn't know. I swear I would have." Elijah raised a hand not to silence him, but to stop the lies before they formed. "It wouldn't have mattered who I was. he said softly. I watched how you treated Marcus before you ever saw me. That's what matters. Marcus lowered his head, overwhelmed. Kayla stepped closer to him, offering a tissue someone silently passed down the aisle. The room had shifted. The power had shifted. Now came the collapse. Elijah tapped his phone once. Director Shaw, he said calmly. Confirm suspension. A crisp reply echoed through the speaker. Confirmed. Manager Troy Hawthorne, full suspension pending investigation. Access revoked. HR notified. Beep, beep, beep. 3 small, sharp tones. 3 nails in the coffin. Troy staggered back, staring at his darkened badge like it had betrayed him personally. You can't take my career like this, he stammered. You don't understand what this job means. Elijah met his panic with the same calm he'd held since part 1. You took Marcus's dignity, he said. You ignored 12 complaints. You used fear instead of leadership. This isn't me taking anything from you. This is you facing what you built. A murmur swept through the crowd agreement, shock, vindication, but it didn't stop there. Elijah continued, voice steady enough to cut through the air. Director Shaw, proceed with secondary actions. Copy, initiating staff review. A few employees gasped. Others straightened. Guilty? Nervous? Afraid? Kayla swallowed hard. Elijah, Director Grant, sir, what does that mean? He turned toward her, softer now. It means we're evaluating who supported this culture and who fought against it. Kayla's eyes shimmered, not with fear, but with realization. She looked at Marcus. He nodded at her, the first moment of quiet relief on his face all day. Then a chime rang from the store's office hallway. A notification tone not meant for the public. A systems update. A lockout sequence. Shaw's voice returned. Store terminals updating. Manager permissions revoked. Access transferred. Troy's face drained. No, 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 no. You can't. That's my office. It was your office, Elijah corrected. Until you chose to weaponize it. 2 eyes. Troy ran a shaking hand through his hair, panic spiraling. You can't do this in front of customers. This isn't procedure. It's exactly procedure, Elijah said. And transparency is part of accountability. Customers recorded. Employees watched. And Troy, the man who barked orders and hid behind policy, couldn't hide now. Director, Shaw said. Security team requested. ETA, 2 minutes. Troy backed away further. You're bringing security? For me? I didn't assault anyone. You assaulted trust, Elijah replied. And you failed your team. That was when another voice spoke up. A quiet, steady voice no one expected. It was the elderly woman from Frozen Foods, hands wrapped around her cane. I watched him snap at the young man for weeks, she said. He always blamed him. He never helped him. More customers chimed in. He yelled at a cashier for ringing too slow. Dulls. He made my son cry last month. He pushed a cart at a teenager in the parking lot. Every sentence added weight. Every voice became evidence. Troy clutched his head. Stop, stop. This isn't fair. This isn't... Elijah stepped closer, just enough so Troy had to look at him. Do you know what Marcus asked for when he filed those complaints? Troy blinked through panic. What did he ask for? Help. Elijah's voice was so quiet the entire room leaned closer. He didn't ask for revenge. He didn't ask for punishment. He asked for help. That broke something in Marcus. A tear slipped down his cheek, not from fear, but release. And you ignored him, Elijah finished. Footsteps approached from the back hallway security, arriving with calm authority. They weren't aggressive. They weren't loud. They weren't threatening. They simply stood beside Elijah, awaiting instruction. Troy's knees buckled. Elijah, Director Grant, please, just don't do this, please. Elijah inhaled once, slow, measured, controlled. I'm not firing you today, he said. Troy exhaled in shaky relief, until Elijah continued. I'm giving HR everything they need to decide your future. And I'm making sure Marcus and every employee here never goes unheard again. That hit harder than termination. It was justice. Pure, uncompromised, unapologetic. Then Elijah looked to security and nodded. Escort him out. Number. Troy's breath collapsed inward. No, wait, please. But security gently took him by the arms and guided him toward the door. He didn't fight. He couldn't. The customers parted like a sea, not out of pity, but out of clarity. Because the collapse was complete, and in its place stood something stronger, a leader, a witness, a protector, a black CEO who didn't need volume to rewrite the room. Elijah Grant turned back to Marcus. "It's your turn now," he said softly. "To be heard." Everyone. Most endings arrive with noise. Arguments, doors slamming, sirens. But the end of this moment arrived in something far rarer, respectful silence. The kind that says, "We all just witnessed something real." Troy was gone. Security had guided him gently through the sliding doors and into the parking lot, his figure shrinking under the afternoon sun until the door closed behind him. What remained was the aftermath. Soft, charged, honest. Marcus stood in the center of it, his posture tentative, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to breathe normally yet. Kayla stayed at his side. Customers lingered near their carts, phones lowered now, not out of boredom but out of reverence. Because, for the first time since the day began, the store felt safe. Elijah looked around the room as if taking a mental photograph. Every face, every witness, every person who decided to stay instead of pretending nothing happened. Then he spoke, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a weight that pulled everyone inward. "Thank you for standing here," he said. "Thank you for watching, for speaking up, for not turning away." A middle-aged man near aisle 4 nodded slowly, the kind of nod that says, "I learned something here today." Elijah turned to the staff. All of them. Cashiers, stockers, bakery workers, even the teenager still wearing an apron smudged with flour. "You deserve leadership that hears you," he said. "You deserve a workplace where no one is afraid to ask for help." His gaze landed on Kayla first. "You were brave," he told her. "Most people stay quiet. You didn't." Kayla's eyes filled instantly. I didn't want Marcus getting blamed again." "That's what integrity looks like," Elijah said. "And it will not be forgotten." She covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to cry. Then Elijah turned to Marcus, the man who started this day swallowing his pain, the man who believed crying at work made him a problem instead of a person. Marcus tried to straighten his posture, but emotion pulled at him, softening every line in his face. "Elijah," he whispered, "I didn't think anyone would ever listen." Elijah stepped closer, lowering his voice so the words carried without force. "I know what it feels like," he said. "To be dismissed, to be talked over, to be treated like you don't belong in a place you help keep running." Marcus swallowed hard. I'm nobody compared to you." Elijah shook his head. "No, your dignity is not smaller than mine. Your voice isn't smaller. You deserved respect long before you knew my name." A small sob escaped Marcus's throat, quiet, messy, real. Kayla gently touched his back. Elijah waited until Marcus met his eyes again. "I'm recommending you for paid leave while HR handles this," Elijah said. "And when you're ready, we'll talk about your future here." Marcus blinked. "My future?" "You've been carrying more than your share," Elijah replied. "It's time someone carried you for a change." The store rustled with emotion. Someone whispered, "God, that's leadership." Another said, "If my boss talked like that, I'd run through walls." Elijah exhaled, the last of the tension easing from his shoulders. Then he addressed the entire store. Calm, grounded, resolute. "What happened here today is not normal," he said. "It's not acceptable, and it will not be repeated." He paused, the kind of pause that lets the truth settle into the floorboards. "Justice," he continued, "isn't loud. It's consistent. It's work. It's every small choice to see people instead of stepping over them." The room was completely silent. Not out of fear, out of unity. Elijah let the silence breathe before giving the final line, the one that would echo long after he left the building. "I didn't come here to raise my voice," he said softly. "I came here to raise the standard." Every witness felt the shift. Every employee felt the weight lift. And Marcus, still wiping his face, stood a little taller. The storm had passed. The room had changed. And dignity, at last, stood where fear once lived. Elijah nodded to the staff, offered Marcus a quiet, reassuring look, and turned toward the exit. Not as a customer, not as a stranger, but as the man who restored the ground beneath them. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The standard was already higher. And the story, their story, would never be the same again.